Two Muslim women are removed from a flight simply because of how they look. No crime, no reason. But when the truth starts to unfold, it raises a bigger question about safety, bias, and injustice. Stay tuned to see how this shocking story reveals more than just a flight incident. Imagine you're all set for a flight. Your bags are packed, your seat is confirmed, and you're excited to reach your destination. But suddenly, you're asked to leave the plane. Not because you broke any rules or caused trouble, but because of how you look. Sounds crazy, right? But this is exactly what happened to two Muslim women on an American Airlines flight a few years ago. Now, let's take a step back and understand the situation. Nayala Muhammad, a multimedia journalist, and her friend were on flight 2239 from Miami to Washington, D.C. They were waiting for the plane to take off when things suddenly took a strange turn. The flight was delayed, which happens all the time, right? They were just sitting there, trying to pass the time. But then, a flight attendant came up to them and said something that would change everything. She felt unsafe around them. Now, think about that for a moment. They didn't do anything wrong. They weren't shouting, causing problems, or even doing anything that could make someone feel unsafe. But the flight attendant felt something was wrong just by looking at them. What could possibly make someone feel this way about two women simply sitting in their seats? What was the real reason behind this decision? These women, just like anyone else, were minding their own business. They were simply passengers on a flight, but the way they were treated made it feel like they were criminals. The flight attendant, instead of talking to them or trying to understand the situation, decided to call the authorities. And that's when things got even more complicated. When the Miami-Dade police arrived, they didn't seem worried at all. They weren't there to protect the passengers or investigate any real danger. Instead, they joked with the women and even posed for pictures, as if nothing serious was happening. The two women who were just trying to get home were made to feel like criminals, while the police treated the situation like a joke. It's hard to believe, right? That's exactly what happened. But the question that everyone started asking was, why? Why were these women targeted? Why were they kicked off the plane for something they didn't do? Let's break it down. The flight attendant claimed she felt unsafe. But what does that even mean? Did the women do anything to cause alarm? Were they acting in a way that could make anyone feel threatened? But sometimes when people look different, or when they're part of a group that's often treated unfairly, it doesn't take much for others to feel unsafe. And this is where things get complicated. It's not about the actions of the women. It's about how they were seen based on their appearance, their background, and their religion. The fact that these two women were Muslim made them stand out. And in a world where stereotypes and prejudices still exist, being different can sometimes make you a target. In this case, it seemed like their appearance was enough to make someone feel uncomfortable, even though they hadn't done anything to deserve it. It's painful to think about, isn't it? Imagine being treated like a threat when you're just trying to go about your day. But this incident didn't just end there. The two women, Nayala Muhammad and her friend, felt humiliated. They were embarrassed in front of everyone on the plane, and even though the police were friendly, the damage was already done. The way they were treated wasn't just about one bad flight attendant or one strange situation. It was about something much deeper. This was a clear example of how people can be unfairly treated because of who they are or where they come from. It's something that many people of different races, religions, and backgrounds face every day. And while some might dismiss it as just a one-off incident for the women involved, it was a painful reminder of the discrimination that still exists in our society. Now, Nayala Muhammad didn't stay quiet about what happened. She decided to speak out, sharing her story on social media to make sure people knew what had happened. She posted a picture of herself with the police officers, with a caption that pointed out how ridiculous the whole situation was. She wrote, "We were removed from American Air Flight 2239 traveling from MIA DCA because the airline attendant felt unsafe around us." But here's the twist. She didn't just talk about the mistreatment. She also pointed out how the police officers, who were supposed to help, treated her and her friend like nothing was wrong. In her post, she wrote about how they joked with her and even posed for pictures as if nothing had happened. It was a stark contrast to the way the airline treated them, and it really got people thinking. Why were these women being treated like criminals? Was it just a misunderstanding, or was it something deeper? The truth is, this situation highlighted something that many people might not realize. It showed how easily people can be judged based on their appearance or background, even when they haven't done anything wrong. And it showed how difficult it can be to challenge those judgments, especially when you're a minority. It's easy for some to brush off these situations as isolated incidents, but for those who experience them, it's a daily reality. For the women involved, this wasn't just about being removed from a flight. It was about being made to feel less than, about being treated unfairly simply because of how they looked. And as the story spread, people began to ask themselves, how many others have experienced something like this? How many others have been judged unfairly because of their religion, their race, or their appearance? It's an important question, one that forces us to think about the world we live in and the biases that still exist. So, what happened after the police arrived and posed for pictures with the two women? It wasn't just an awkward moment. It was a clear reflection of a deeper issue that many people, especially minorities, face every day. Nyala Mohammed, one of the women, later shared her thoughts online, expressing just how humiliating and painful the experience was. She said they were made to feel like they were somehow a threat, simply because of their appearance. Think about that for a moment. It wasn't their behavior, their actions, or even the way they spoke that caused this. It was simply their religion and the way they looked. Nyala and her friend are both Muslim American women, and it's painful to think that they were treated like criminals just for being who they are. It's something that many people in minority groups experience daily, but it doesn't make it any less hurtful or unjust. Nyala later wrote about how she and her friend were humiliated by the airline. The flight attendant felt unsafe, which led to them being kicked off the plane. But this wasn't just a random decision. It was clear to Nyala and her friend that the flight attendant had made her decision based on prejudice. The fact that they were Muslim women seemed to be the only reason they were removed from the flight. And this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. For many people who belong to minority communities, incidents like these are all too familiar. Whether it's on an airplane, in a store, or on the street, it's a harsh reminder of how people are sometimes judged unfairly based on their race, religion, or appearance. But here's the thing. These two women were not dangerous. They were not acting in any way that would have made anyone feel unsafe. Nyala was a journalist, and her friend worked for the government. They had every right to be on that flight, just like anyone else. But somehow, in that moment, they were treated as if they didn't belong. They were treated as if they were threats, simply because of who they were. When the police arrived at the scene, the situation took another turn. Instead of taking the women's side, asking questions, or even looking into why they were being removed from the flight, the officers were friendly, even laughing with them and taking pictures. This moment, where the police treated the situation as a joke, made it even clearer that something wasn't right. Why were they being treated this way? Was it because of how they looked? Was it because they were Muslim? Nyala and her friend were left in a very difficult position. They were humiliated and embarrassed. They were made to feel like criminals, when in fact they were just two women trying to get home. It's easy to imagine how emotionally exhausting this situation must have been for them. To be told you're a threat, to be kicked off a flight without any explanation, and then to be treated like a joke by the authorities. How would you feel? Wouldn't you feel hurt, angry, and confused? And yet, in the midst of all this, Nyala and her friend showed incredible strength. They didn't just sit back and accept the treatment they received. They shared their experience with the world, speaking out about what had happened to them. They knew that if they didn't speak up, this story would just be another one that would get swept under the rug. So, They decided to use their voices to raise awareness about the real issue here: racial and religious profiling. Now let's step back and think about what this incident means in the bigger picture. This wasn't just a problem with one airline or one flight attendant. This is a symptom of a much larger issue that affects many people, especially in societies where fear and stereotypes run deep. Too often, people are judged by how they look, by the color of their skin, or by their religion. And that judgment leads to discrimination, exclusion, and sometimes even violence. The truth is, this incident didn't just affect Nyla and her friend. It affected everyone who has ever been made to feel like an outsider because of their race or religion. It's a problem that doesn't just go away after one incident. It's something that people have to face every single day, whether it's being treated unfairly at work, being stopped by the police for no reason, or being looked at suspiciously just because of how you look. These experiences are part of a painful reality for many people in the world. But there's something we can learn from this story. It's a story about standing up for what's right, about using our voices to speak out against injustice, and about recognizing that we all deserve to be treated with respect, no matter our background. Nyla and her friend showed us the power of speaking out, of challenging unfair treatment, and of standing up for yourself, even when the odds are against you. At the end of the day, this isn't just about two women being kicked off a flight. It's about a larger issue that we all need to address: the need for understanding, respect, and fairness for all people, regardless of where they come from or what they believe. We can't keep pretending that these issues don't exist. We can't keep turning a blind eye to the discrimination that happens every day. What happened to Nyla and her friend was wrong, but their decision to speak out gave us an opportunity to reflect on our own actions and the way we treat others. It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in making the world a better, more inclusive place. We don't need to agree on everything, but we do need to treat each other with kindness and dignity. And so the story of Nyla and her friend isn't just a story about two women who were unfairly treated. It's a story about courage, resilience, and the power of standing up for what's right. It's a story that reminds us that we all have a responsibility to challenge prejudice and fight for a world where everyone is treated equally. Let's take that lesson to heart and do better, because the fight for fairness isn't over, and it's something that starts with each of us.